Welcome to the Empathy Stories channel, where we dive into powerful, emotional tales that remind us of the strength of love, forgiveness, and family. Today's story follows a father and his daughters as they navigate the challenges of rebuilding their family after years of heartbreak. It's a journey of redemption, healing, and rediscovering the power of second chances. Let's join them in their heartfelt journey toward hope. It was Christmas Eve when Michael Parker's life irrevocably shifted. The warmth of the holiday season, usually filled with laughter and togetherness, was replaced by an overwhelming emptiness. The smell of roasted turkey, the hum of Christmas music filling the background, and the sight of his four daughters, bright-eyed and eager to celebrate, did little to alleviate the growing ache in his chest. Everything seemed out of place, though nothing had changed in the house, except Jessica, his wife, wasn't there. Michael stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove, the flickering lights of the Christmas tree casting long shadows against the walls. His daughters, Ava, the eldest at 11, Lila, 9, Lucy, 7, and young Grace, just 5, worked diligently at the kitchen table, decorating gingerbread cookies. Ava carefully applied icing to her gingerbread man. Lila sprinkled colorful sugars with enthusiasm, and Lucy, more eager than precise, coated hers with a haphazard layer of icing. Grace, too young to decorate, watched them with fascination, mimicking their actions as best as she could with her tiny hands. "Daddy, when's Mommy coming home?" Grace's high-pitched voice cut through the kitchen chatter, bringing Michael back to the present. His heart twisted, but he forced a smile, trying to calm his daughter's nerves. He had already asked the same question a dozen times that evening. "She's just on her way, sweetheart," he replied, stirring the pot a little too vigorously, trying to mask the truth. Jessica had promised she would be back soon, but as the hours passed, the empty chair at the dinner table remained a constant reminder that something was terribly wrong. Michael found his mind drifting to 5 years earlier, a time when everything had felt so different. He remembered the Christmas Eve when they had laughed and joked in their living room, surrounded by presents, the children so full of life. Jessica, glowing and pregnant with Lucy, sat beside him, stroking her belly as they admired the girl's crayon drawings of reindeer. But now, instead of the laughter, there was only silence in the home, broken by the occasional clink of silverware. When Michael's phone buzzed again, he could no longer pretend. There was no message from Jessica, no update, no phone call. It wasn't until 9 p.m. that the letter appeared. Michael had barely noticed it on the table when he went to pour himself a drink, still trying to distract himself with little tasks, when the small, white envelope caught his eye. His hands trembled as he opened it. The words burned into his mind like a branded scar. "Michael, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I love the girls, but I need to find myself. I'm leaving with Ryan. Please take care of them. Jessica." The room seemed to tilt beneath him. He sank into the nearest chair, the letter still clutched in his hands, his mind racing. Ryan, the name struck him like a blow. Ryan was the new partner at Jessica's company. Michael never imagined that a simple colleague could be the catalyst for such destruction. He had always been so preoccupied with his work, believing things at home were fine, thinking everything would be okay as long as they maintained the outward appearance of a perfect family. But that was far from the truth. "Daddy," Ava's voice was low, concerned, as she looked at him. The once lively girls had stopped decorating the cookies. Sensing something was wrong, Michael forced a smile and tried to steady himself. "Let's just finish these cookies." "All right," he said, trying to push past the rising tide of panic. But Ava, ever perceptive, noticed the letter in his hand. "Mommy's not coming home, is she?" she asked softly, her eyes wide, trying to understand, trying to piece together the puzzle that was unraveling before them. The weight of her question crushed him. How could he explain the devastation to them? How could he tell them their mother had left? Not just him, but them as well? He had promised to always protect them, to keep their family intact, but now it felt like that promise was being broken in the most painful way. He looked at each of them. Ava, so mature for her age, trying to hold it together. Lila, with her carefree smile. now cracked with confusion, Lucy, who simply stared blankly, too young to grasp what was happening, and little Grace, oblivious to the storm around her, still hoping, still asking, when her mother would return. "All right, girls," Michael said, his voice trembling as he stood. "How about we open one present before dinner?" It was a weak attempt to create a semblance of normalcy. They gathered around the tree, their eyes lighting up with the promise of a gift. For a few moments, they forgot their mother's absence, each of them unwrapping a toy or a book, their smiles briefly lifting the heavy fog of sadness that had descended on the house. But as the evening stretched on, and the last present was opened, the overwhelming reality of their new life without Jessica began to set in. The girls were still too young to fully understand the magnitude of the situation. But Michael could feel it. His life had changed forever. His future, once intertwined with Jessica's, now seemed uncertain and frightening. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Michael allowed himself to break down. The tears he had been holding back for hours finally flowing freely. He had failed his family, failed them in ways he hadn't yet come to understand. But one thing was clear: he had to be strong for his daughters. He would not let them suffer because of Jessica's choices. He would carry them through this, even if it meant carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. As the house fell silent, Michael made a promise to himself and his daughters. This would not define them. They would survive, and somehow, they would thrive. They had to. For them, he would find a way to move forward. Little did Michael know, the path ahead would not be as straightforward as he hoped, and his determination would soon be tested in ways he never imagined. The days following Jessica's departure were a blur of confusion and pain. Michael's life, once filled with the hum of family routines, was now consumed by the challenge of single parenthood. Every moment was a balancing act, juggling work, the household, and, most importantly, his daughter's emotional needs. His girls, although resilient in their own ways, each struggled in their own silent battles. Ava tried to play the role of the mature eldest sister, attempting to hold the family together with an air of calm that betrayed her inner turmoil. Lila, the most outwardly expressive, bottled up her frustration and confusion. Lucy seemed confused, asking for her mother without understanding the absence. And Grace was still too young to understand anything beyond the fact that her world had shifted on its axis. As Christmas passed, the early months of the year came and went, filled with routine. Michael tried to keep their life as normal as possible, all while quietly questioning his own decisions. Why hadn't he seen the cracks in their marriage sooner? Why hadn't he noticed the subtle signs of Jessica's unhappiness? But there was no time for self-pity. His focus had to be on the girls. He had to be there for them, even if, at times, it felt like he was falling apart inside. Then, 2 years later, it happened. Jessica came back. It was a quiet afternoon in early spring when Michael was at home, catching up on paperwork while the girls played in the backyard. His heart jumped in his chest when the doorbell rang. He hadn't expected any visitors, least of all Jessica. But when he opened the door, there she was standing on the doorstep, looking almost fragile. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, and she looked older, worn by time and regret. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Jessica's face was full of sorrow, her eyes swollen from tears she had obviously shed. Michael stood frozen, unsure of what to do or say. His mind raced, torn between the anger and resentment he had held onto for so long, and the soft, lingering feelings he still carried for the woman who had once been his world. "Michael," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion, "I've made the worst mistake of my life." He took a deep breath, his jaw tightening as he held back his emotions. "What do you want, Jessica?" His voice was firm, yet laced with an undercurrent of weariness. He had been waiting for this moment for so long, yet now that it was here, he wasn't sure he was ready to face it. She stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "I need to tell you everything. Please, just let me explain. I've been trying to make it right, to understand what I've done. And I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm here because I want to try." The words hung in the air between them, But Michael didn't move. He was paralyzed by the enormity of the moment. 2 years of anger, sadness, and confusion had built up. And now, the woman who had shattered his world was standing in front of him, asking for a chance to fix it all. "Where were you all this time?" Michael asked quietly, his voice betraying the hurt he had been carrying. "I was with Ryan," she said, her voice breaking. But it was a lie. He wasn't who I thought he was. He was everything I needed in that moment. But now I see that I ran away from the one thing that really mattered, our family. I left you and the girls. I thought I was looking for freedom, but all I did was destroy the people I love." Her words were like a heavy weight, pressing down on his chest. The anger he had buried deep inside of him started to resurface. "And now you expect me to just let you come back? After everything? After you left us with no explanation? No goodbyes? I don't expect you to forgive me." "Michael," Jessica whispered, her voice filled with regret. "I know I can't erase what I've done, but I want to be a mother to our girls again. I want to fix what I've broken, even if it takes a lifetime." Michael took a step back, his hand resting on the doorframe as if to steady himself. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion, and the faintest glimmer of hope. Could he trust her again? Could he allow Jessica back into their lives after everything she had done? Before he could respond, Ava appeared in the hallway, her eyes wary but searching. Michael's heart sank when he saw her, knowing the pain and confusion that would be stirred up by Jessica's return. Ava was always the first to sense when something wasn't right. She had grown up too fast in the 2 years since Jessica had left. And now, she stood at the threshold, unsure whether to welcome her mother or shield herself from the hurt. "Mom!" Ava's voice was a mixture of hope and disbelief. Jessica turned slowly, her eyes locking with her daughter's. And for a moment, Michael saw the tenderness that had once existed between them. But it was fleeting, and the silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. "Ava," Jessica said softly, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I should have never left. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try, if you'll let me." Ava didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, her eyes darting from Jessica to Michael, trying to make sense of everything. The years of pain, of abandonment, could not be erased in a single moment. "I don't know what to say," Ava finally whispered, her voice raw. Michael, seeing the hurt in his daughter's eyes, stepped forward, taking Ava's hand. "You don't have to say anything right now. We'll take this one step at a time, together." Jessica's shoulders slumped in defeat. She had hoped for an immediate reunion, but she knew that it was going to take time, if ever. The damage she had caused was far deeper than she had ever realized, and it would take more than just words to begin healing the wounds she had inflicted on her family. In the days that followed, Jessica's presence in their home was both a blessing and a curse. The girls, especially Ava, struggled to accept her return. They weren't sure if they could trust her again. Lila was cautiously optimistic, but unsure of how to rebuild a relationship with a mother who had once disappeared from their lives. Lucy, too young to understand fully, wanted nothing more than to have the family she remembered, while Grace, oblivious to the complexities of the situation, simply clung to her mother whenever she could. For Michael, the emotional toll was even greater. He found himself constantly caught between his love for Jessica and the deep hurt she had caused. How could he let her back in? How could he forgive her for the choices she had made? Yet, despite all the pain, something had changed. They were trying. Jessica was doing everything she could to be present, to prove her sincerity. But the road ahead was long and uncertain. Would they be able to rebuild their fractured family? Would trust ever be restored? The questions hung in the air like a cloud, casting a shadow over every moment of their reunion. But for the first time in 2 years, Michael felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could heal together. The weeks following Jessica's return were a delicate dance of reconnection and resistance. The house that had once been full of laughter, love, and shared memories now felt like a fragile shell, holding the remnants of a family trying to put itself back together. Michael's heart ached as he watched Jessica try, desperately, to repair the damage she had done. But the wounds were deep, and his daughters, though quietly hopeful, weren't ready to forgive her just yet. Ava, the eldest, was the first to speak her mind. She had spent 2 years nurturing a sense of independence, becoming the pillar for her younger sisters in Jessica's absence. Her protective nature towards her siblings had grown even stronger. And when Jessica first returned, it was clear that Ava was the one most reluctant to let her back into their lives. She had been abandoned once, and the fear of being hurt again loomed large in her heart. "Mom, you don't just get to come back after everything," Ava said one evening, her voice tight with emotion. "You left us without any explanation. We had to figure out how to live without you, how to be a family without you. And now you think you can just walk back in and everything will be fine?" Jessica stood frozen at the doorway of Ava's room, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to meet her daughter's gaze. The weight of Ava's words hung heavy in the room, and for a brief moment, Jessica wondered if she would ever be able to erase the pain she had caused. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Ava," Jessica said softly, her voice trembling. "I don't expect you to forget what happened, but I'm here, and I want to try. I'll prove it to you, day by day." Ava's eyes softened slightly, but the hardness remained. "Trying isn't enough. We've been through too much." Jessica's heart clenched, but she understood. She had left them, and now she had to live with the consequences of that choice. The family she once knew, the family she had helped build, was no longer hers to take for granted. Every word, every gesture from here on out had to be earned. While Ava remained distant, Lila, her younger sister, found herself caught between hope and fear. Lila had always been the one to bridge gaps, to smooth over awkward silences. But this time, even she couldn't ignore the deep rift that had formed in their family. She wanted to believe that things could return to the way they were. But a part of her feared that their home would never feel the same. "Dad, do you think we'll ever be okay again?" Lila asked one evening as they sat at the kitchen table, the weight of her question pressing down on Michael. Michael looked up from his work, his tired eyes meeting Lila's. His heart ached, not just for the years lost, but for the uncertainty of the future. "I don't know, sweetie. I wish I could tell you that everything will be fine, but what I do know is that we're trying. We're working at it, and that's all we can do right now." Lila nodded, a trace of a smile tugging at her lips. She understood. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but the hope for healing, no matter how small, was enough to carry her through the days ahead. Meanwhile, Lucy, who was only 7, still clung to the memories of a mother who had once been her entire world. Her understanding of the situation was limited, but her longing for the family she remembered was strong. She often sat at the window, watching for Jessica to come home, asking Michael when things would go back to normal. Grace, too, was a constant reminder of the innocence they all had lost. Her questions were simple but profound, as she asked why her mother didn't live with them anymore, or when she would come back to read her bedtime stories. At night, when the house fell silent and the girls were finally asleep, Michael would sit in the living room, his mind racing. He wasn't sure how to rebuild the trust that had been shattered, or how to create new memories in a house that had been haunted by old wounds. But every morning, as he looked at his daughters, each one so different yet so undeniably his, he knew that he had to try. The turning point came when Jessica made the decision to seek professional help. It wasn't enough to say she was sorry. She had to prove she was willing to change. The pain she had caused could not be undone with words alone. It would take time, and it would take effort, but it was a necessary step toward rebuilding what had been broken. "Michael, I've been seeing a therapist," Jessica confessed one evening after dinner. Her voice was quiet, but there was determination in it. "I've been working on myself. I know I have a long way to go, but I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to earn back your trust." Michael didn't respond immediately, unsure how to react. He had heard the words before, but the sincerity in Jessica's voice made him pause. He knew that rebuilding their family would be a long and difficult journey. But maybe, just maybe, they could start anew. As Jessica continued her therapy sessions, Michael watched her make small changes. She began taking on more responsibility around the house, helping the girls with their schoolwork, and, slowly but surely, reconnecting with them. The awkward silences between them began to lessen, and small moments of warmth started to return. One Saturday afternoon, after weeks of quiet tension, Michael suggested they go for a family outing. He knew it would be difficult, but he also knew it was important for the girls to see their mother trying, and for Jessica to see how much they needed her. They visited the park, walking together as a family, something they hadn't done in over 2 years. Michael could feel the old sense of unity. Even if it was tentative, the girls were quiet, but they didn't pull away. And for the first time in a long while, Michael felt a glimmer of hope that they could rebuild what had been lost. But it was when Ava, after weeks of silence, finally spoke to Jessica that Michael knew the real healing had begun. "Mom," Ava said softly, her voice breaking the tension. "I don't know if I'll ever be okay with what happened, but I can try to understand. I can try to forgive, but it's going to take time." Jessica's eyes filled with tears, and she pulled Ava into an embrace, the weight of the past few years pressing on both of them. It wasn't a grand gesture of forgiveness, but it was a beginning. It was the first step toward rebuilding the bonds that had been fractured, and it was a promise that, together, they would heal slowly, but surely, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. The family continued to face challenges. Trust didn't return overnight. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and heartache. But there were also moments of joy, small victories that reminded them why they had to keep going. The laughter at the dinner table began to sound genuine again. Jessica and Michael started talking more, not just about the girls, but about themselves, their hopes, their regrets, their dreams. And one evening, as Michael stood in the doorway, watching Jessica help Ava with her homework, a thought crossed his mind. Maybe they could rebuild. After all, not perfectly, but together, stronger than before. The road ahead was long, and there was still much to be done. But for the first time in a long time, Michael felt that their family, broken as it had been, had a chance at a new beginning. Thank you so much for watching this emotional journey of healing and second chances. It's a reminder that, even in the darkest times, love and effort can lead us to brighter days. If you connected with this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more moving narratives that inspire empathy and understanding. See you in the next video.